Pompey Sound, your hourly update from Fratton Park, sponsored by Piglet's Pantry, the home of award-winning and handmade food on the South Coast.
Pompey's agent fees have been revealed, placing them among the Championship's most frugal clubs when it comes to paying intermediaries. The club handed over £696,189 to FA-registered agents between February 2024 and February 2025, the second lowest amount in the division. This figure represents a significant jump from last year's £270,000 spend when the club secured promotion from League One as champions. Only fellow promoted side Oxford United paid less in agent fees, £572,808, with Derby County completing the trio of promoted clubs at the bottom of the spending table at £707,077. In stark contrast, Leeds United topped the list with a massive £18.8 million outlay on agent fees. Along with Burnley, £5.3 million, and Sheffield United, £4.4 million, these three clubs were responsible for nearly half of the Championship's total agent spending of £63.2 million. Among the remaining clubs, struggling Hull City surprisingly ranked fourth highest with £3.1 million in agent fees, followed by Norwich City, £2.6 million, and Middlesbrough, £2.5 million.
Football fans possess nothing in greater abundance than a healthy cynicism, and there does seem to be, superficially anyway, something not quite right with those sums of money being paid by clubs to football agents. And a quick look at the FIFA regulations as they have most recently been modified by us at Pompey Sound suggests that the problem is even more impenetrable than we thought it was at first reading.
According to the FIFA regulations on football agents may only be paid commission by their client personally, i.e., the player with whom the agent has signed a contract. It is prohibited to transfer the obligation to pay the remuneration to another entity. This means that clubs will no longer be able to pay football agents for their players. The exception to this is if the player is to earn less than $200,000 per year at the club in question. As indicated earlier, all the players' earnings at the club, including bonuses, e.g. for goals, assists, number of minutes played, are included in this limit. If the player earns less, the club may pay the agent's salary on behalf of the player. However, the agent continues to be paid in accordance with the provisions of the agency agreement. As a result, the agent will receive the same remuneration as he would have received from the player, and other agreements in this respect are not permitted. The club cannot accept an obligation to pay additional remuneration, nor can it otherwise modify the player's arrangements with the football agent.
There are, so we're led to believe, several or more Pompey players who are earning more than that $200,000 ceiling, which means they are paying their agents' fees, not Portsmouth Football Club. And yet Portsmouth Football Club have run up, it seems, according to the latest, and by the way, that's FA information that we're dealing in there, that Pompey have run up a £600,000 bill paying agents direct themselves, because according to the regulations, those players earn less than $200,000 a year. So at the end of the day, we probably think here at Pompey Sound that we know less than we did before all this information was placed in front of us. Gareth Evans and Brett Pitman are heading to Portsmouth on May the 21st for a meet and greet and a Q&A. Pompey Sound caught up with them and asked Gareth just what they've got in mind.
Yes, there's a meet and greet package for a little bit extra. You'll get an opportunity to sit with us, have a little bit of a chat, have a photo, etc. There'll be other things thrown into it during the night. There'll be an auction, and we'll have a raffle and all sorts of things going on. So it'll be a really enjoyable evening, but it'll be very Portsmouth based in terms of everything that's covered. It'll be Brett and I telling tales of our times at the football club and go from there. Really, it'll be a really good one to attend.
You've got time. That's May the 21st. You can contact the Gaiety Theatre Southsea for information about tickets and that upgrade.
A troubling incident at Fratton Park has sparked a police investigation after fans threw objects including a drinks bottle at an assistant referee during Portsmouth's 2-2 draw with Derby County. The incident happened in the 74th minute when items were hurled from the north stand, prompting stadium officials to make an immediate announcement condemning the behaviour and asking witnesses to come forward. Portsmouth now face potential FA disciplinary action, which is particularly concerning given their recent history. The club was slapped with a £50,000 fine just this January after similar crowd trouble during a League One match against Barnsley last April. That previous fine came with a stern warning about future conduct, and this latest incident could result in further financial penalties or worse. Pompey officials have taken a hard stance, reminding fans that throwing objects, using discriminatory language, or entering the pitch are criminal offences. They've promised significant sanctions for anyone identified in Saturday's incident, alongside possible police action. The club has thanked those who've already provided information and is urging others with knowledge of the events to email info@pompeyfc.co.uk in confidence as their investigation continues.
This business of crowd behaviour is as complicated as you want it to get. Certain aspects are not complicated in the slightest. You don't hurl insults at people, discriminatory insults in particular, at people from the terraces or the seats. You don't throw objects at people. Obviously, there are worse objects to throw and objects that aren't. And I was at the Sheffield United game about 10, 15 years ago when I remember a Sheffield United fan, in his or her anger, hurled an entire tube of Pringles onto the pitch. Not necessarily at anybody, just onto the pitch. And the Pringles hit the deck and it was full, or 3/4 full. And all these beautiful Pringles spilled out onto the pitch, which was an indication of just how passionate the fan was, because they'd wasted a 3/4 tube of Pringles. Was it dangerous? Well, it could have been potentially dangerous, of course. Pretty much anything can be potentially dangerous, although an empty third of a litre bottle of what once had mineral water that is made of plastic is not the same as a litre bottle of mineral water that's full of water. So, you can complicate the whole thing. You can muddy the waters, but the best thing to do is don't throw anything. Don't throw anything at all. Don't shout anything obscene or discriminatory from the stands. But the business of coming onto the pitch being a criminal offence is probably just worth a little dalliance, because some Pompey fans ran onto the pitch when Shaughnessy got that goal against Barnsley and the game hadn't ended. And a handful of Pompey fans ran onto the pitch, and I still have a very clear memory of one of them confronting the Barnsley centre-forward who was standing on the centre spot waiting to get the game going again, and confronting him and kind of squaring up to him. That's criminal. Of course it is. The game isn't over. The pitch belongs to the club and to the players, and in no way belongs to fans who want to confront opposing players. That's deeply wrong. One hopes that person was caught and is punished. I doubt it. It's a complicated business identifying people who engage in such sorts of behaviour. But can we honestly say that the 10,000 people who spilled onto the pitch, which was going to be dug up anyway, or at least most of it was, a large part of it was, who spilled onto the pitch at the end of the game to celebrate, were they really criminals? I mean, it says in the rule book that it's a criminal offence to enter the field of play. Yes, during the game, of course. That goes without saying. Partly because your reason can only be further criminality besides the trespass, if that's what it is. But at the end of the game, I would think the pitch becomes the property of the club and is no longer under the jurisdiction of FA rules. And therefore the 10,000 people who spilled onto the pitch, I would want to argue, malud, were not guilty of a criminal offence. By the way, the £50,000 fine that Pompey received as a result of that evening, I would have thought was almost entirely to do with the invasion onto the pitch of that handful of fans. And when I say a handful, there were 100 or so came on before the end of the game, and it appeared that a number of them were confrontational towards Barnsley players. Why? Goodness only knows. There is a lifetime of psychology and counselling probably wouldn't get to the bottom of that one. What would be the point? But the people who ran onto the pitch to celebrate deserved to be celebrated. If they thought it was down to them that Pompey got a £50,000 fine and there were 10,000 people on the pitch, they would happily have all paid £5 to a fund to alleviate Pompey of that financial burden. And they didn't, and that's because, in part, I don't think it was them that were responsible for the fine. If Pompey are fined again heavily for whatever was thrown on the pitch, then, or at the assistant referee, I should say, then obviously we need to look again at whether or not it's possible to identify those individuals and subject them to a ban for a season or for 5 seasons or for life or whatever. But it's identifying them that's the issue. When you go to Fratton Park week after week, you sit in the same seat and you get to know the people, particularly the people in front of you, because you can see the back of their heads and you can see how animated they get. And you can hear the things that they're saying. And then there's the people along on the same row as you. You're strangers, except you're all Pompey fans. You kind of get to know them a little bit, especially if you walk into your seat and you've got to say, excuse me. And they stand up and you say, thank you very much. So you kind of get to know them a little bit like that. Then there's the people behind you who you only see if you yourself arrive at your seat late and you've got to duck and say, I'm sorry about getting you away, I'm sorry. So you know the people around you. So we can be absolutely certain, am I right, that there are people who know exactly who were the people who threw those things, whatever they were, but they shouldn't have thrown them. But the difficulty is this. Individuals that throw things at football matches are likely to be, in their own eyes, big personalities. They're likely to be loud, they're likely to be abrasive and confrontational, and you don't want to be the person who is suspected of being the person that has pointed the finger, albeit, the accurate finger at somebody who is going to be interviewed by the authorities. Because you can say that a person sits in seat such and such, and they threw something on the pitch that day, then it's the easiest thing in the world for the club to trace that individual and give that individual's details to the police. So it will be really interesting to see whether that happens, whether what unfolds, whether what court case, if any, takes place, and whether whatever sanctions are imposed. It's a tricky business. We don't want a reputation. We've got a reputation for being amongst the greatest fans in English football. We want to enhance that and magnify that by also being the most fair and reasonable and approachable fans in English football.